I'd like to look at the remaining poetry that we're looking at in groups or pairs, if you would, in some cases. I want to take a look at Alice Carey and Lucy Larcom's poems, The Bridal Veil and A Loyal Woman's No, because I think they're dealing with some of the very same issues. You can provide your own commentary if you want, or your own analysis if you'd like, but both of these women were poets that I think deserve more attention than they've received. I'm not going to argue that they're Shakespeare, an American Shakespeare, either one of them, but I do think that they deserve some greater attention. In the case of both of these poems, you're talking about a sense of suffocation, entrapment, and with regards to marriage, that is, of course, and a lamenting of the lack of spiritual or moral equality or enlightenment on the part of a would-be spouse. The Bridal Veil by Alice Carey starts off, "We're married, they say, and you think you have won me. Well, take this white veil from my head and look on me. Be wary and mold me to roses, not rue. Shake out the filmy thing, fold after fold," the veil, that is, "and see if you have me to keep and to hold." The veil is a really interesting metaphor here for her true self. It's an interesting device she uses anyway, poetic conceit, because the bridal veil sort of keeps the groom from seeing the true her until the moment they're married. It's a covering. It is designed to, among other things, provide mystery, access to the true self, one's face, the importance of your face, revealing your physiognomy, revealing your true self. There's a barrier there that she's arguing is an artificial barrier that is provided there. And she says, "Shake out the filmy thing, fold after fold, and see if you have me to keep and to hold my heart. It is not yours today for the yesterday's winning. The past is not mine. I am too proud to borrow. You must go to new heights if I love you tomorrow." She wants a progressive marriage, a marriage of continued enlightenment. "That way lies my honor, my pathway of pride. But mark you, if greener grasses grow either side, I shall know it and keep my in body with you. Keeping in body with you, shall walk in my spirit with feet on the dew. We're married. Oh, pray that our love do not fail. I have wings flattened out and hid under my veil." This sort of angelic thing that is constantly talked about, women being angelic in the 19th century. It's a huge thing. She says, "Nay, call me not cruel and fear not to take me. I am yours for my lifetime, to be what you make me, to wear my white veil for a sign or a cover, as you shall be proven my lord or my lover, a cover for peace that is dead, or a token of bliss that can never be written or spoken." It's interesting. It's an ambivalent and ambiguous item. A veil can be a good thing, or a veil can be a bad thing. It can be a thing that hides and deceives or acts as a barrier, or it can be a thing that suggests intimacy, right? And so she's presenting the whole idea of a marriage relationship in the same terms. It could be something that is good or something that's bad, but this is a cautionary poem in some respects. If you look at Lucy Larcom's poem, A Woman's Loyal No, very interesting here. This is wrapped up in some dissatisfaction with her lover's unwillingness to take a strong stand with respect to the Civil War and with respect to abolition. And she's arguing a loyal woman's, meaning to the Union, but it's about the Union, United States, and their Union, right? So she's saying, I'm a loyal woman to the Union. You don't care about the cause, don't care about the fight, or at worst have Southern or slave-holding sympathies. This is a problem, right? A big problem for her, because she doesn't just see it as a political difference. She sees it as a fundamental rift between the two people's morality. She says, "No, exclamation point, is my answer from this cold, bleak ridge. Pity me if you will, I look at you with something that is kinder far than scorn, and think, ah, well, I might have groveled too. I might have walked there, fettered and forsworn. I am of nature weak as others are. I might have chosen comfortable ways. Right? I could have decided not to take a stand. It's not easy to take a stand in times like these. It's not easy to decide to dedicate yourself to something like the preservation of the Union, the abolition of slavery. I could have done that. And the suggestion is that he took the easy way out, not with the triumph that looks back to jeer, but as a mortal speaks when God is near. I drop you down my answer. It is this: I am not yours, because you prize in me what is the lowest in my esteem. Meaning her beauty, I think. Only my flowery levels can you see, nor of my heaven-smit summits do you dream. In other words, you don't take my moral commitment to the abolition of slavery and the cause of the Union seriously. The only reason you like me is because you find me attractive. And instead, the reason that I want you to be in love with me is because you see me as another being, another moral, spiritual being who is a thinking, considering person who takes in the world as she sees it and makes her own judgments. I'm not yours because you love yourself. Your heart has scarcely room for me beside. Ooh, that's pretty damning. I could not be shut in with name and pelf. I spurn the shelter of your narrow pride. Not yours because you're not man enough to grasp your country's measure of a man. Ooh, my. You're not man enough to grasp, to understand your country's measure of a man. You don't even understand what an American man ought to be. If such as you, when freedom's ways are rough, cannot walk in them, learn that women can. If you, in other words, if you can't stick by your country when times get tough and fight for freedom and walk that path, you need to realize that there are women who can, and I'm one of them. Not yours because in this nation's need you stoop to bend her losses to your gain, and do not feel the meanness of your deed. I touch no palm defiled with such a stain. So whatever his motivation for deciding not to support the Union, she's suggesting here that it's out of avarice or self-interest in any way. Who weds me must at least with equal pace sometimes move with me at my being's height. Right? In other words, you need to be my equal morally, and you're not. So there's a failing there that she wants to point out to him. Very serious one. Another pair that I'd like for us to look at here: Stoddard's Before the Mirror and Larcom. Again, Larcom's weaving. Larcom is an interesting person, I think. So there she is at the bottom. I tried to move the slide a little bit so you could see that that's her. It's a daguerreotype of her. She was... sadly, her father, I think he was a ship captain, died early on, and her mother took in boarders, and she had to work at the factory in Lowell. Lowell was an interesting place because in the 1840s and I believe in the 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, Lowell was a textile factory, and it employed primarily young women and paid them basically diddly, and worked them like you would imagine a sweatshop would. And unfortunately, because of the deflationary times and the panic of 1837, I believe that was what it is. I don't have my notes in front of me. Wages got lower and lower and lower, and girls there, and we're talking girls, we're not talking about grown women for the most part. A lot of them were just teens and tweens that were working there for lower and lower and lower wages. It became a really oppressive kind of environment. But it was an interesting experiment, and it did produce some things. You can see the copy of the Lowell Offering, which was published there, writings by factory girls, as it says. And so that was Larcom's background in her childhood, to have worked there, and then essentially becoming what I think is mostly a self-educated woman. I think she's a very interesting person. She and Stoddard both, I think, in these poems, share a similar kind of frustration. Both of them are Lady of Shalott comparisons. By the way, if you don't know the story of the Lady of Shalott and Lancelot and all that kind of stuff, and the pre-Raphaelite poets and the pre-Raphaelite artists and whatnot. They really loved this kind of medieval Lady of Shalott kind of legend. So it was a big deal at the time during the Victorian era, especially in England. But they're making reference to this Lady of Shalott story, which is part of kind of an offshoot of Arthurian legend. And the Lady of Shalott, of course, is confined and has a mirror that she sees things. And she can't experience real life because she's cloistered, and she weaves her spinning wheel and all that sort of thing. You can go take a look at it. But it is an interesting story, and they're both using the same vehicle to express their frustration of not being able to be taken seriously as writers, but being more on the sidelines, being cloistered, being confined in some respects. With Stoddard's Before the Mirror, there's a really, that's Stoddard up there, the daguerreotype at the top. That's Carrie there down below her. Stoddard ran with a very literate crowd. I mean, she was Richard Henry Stoddard, her husband, was a very prominent editor. They knew a lot of very popular and very successful writers. And I can't say that her poetry is terrific, but it's not bad. But she always suffered from this sort of inferiority complex. And you see it in this poem, The Poet's Secret. It's really a poem about why can't I be a better poet? I'm not as good as I should be. I'm not as good as my contemporaries. It's a little bit on the sad side. You wonder whether or not part of that was because as a woman she wasn't celebrated as a male author would be. But Before the Mirror, you see this as well, this sense of being cut off or isolated. And she says, now like the Lady of Shalott, I sit before an ancient loom where the shadows come and shadows go and ply my shuttle as they glide. Not as she wove the yellow wool, Ulysses' wife Penelope, a day by day a queen among her maids, but in the night a woman she. I'm not like Penelope. I'm not able to do that. I'm not able to even have that escape that she did. What am I? She basically says. What kind of person am I? I feel my calling is to be a writer, and yet I'm living in a time and place where that can't be fully appreciated, or I can't fully seem to achieve what it is I want to do. But weaving with a steady hand the shadows, whether true or false or true, I put aside a doubt which asks, among these phantoms, what are you? Right? I don't know who I am. I don't. That sense of being displaced, that sense of being lost, that sense of, I think I know my calling, but I'm being told at every point that can't be your calling. It's not supposed to be your calling, but yet I think I should, but I can't achieve my potential because of societal things. There's a sense of futility, of being unappreciated. She's driven to create art, but she's worried that it doesn't have the substance or the worth that the writings of others have. There's an enormous amount of sad insecurity in this, and that the art that she creates won't even be seen at all, ever. That no one will go on to appreciate it, that she'll leave it behind, but it'll be neglected forever. She says, nothing bright is woven here. The shadows grow still darker in the mirror's light. And as my web grows darker too, accursed seems this empty room, for still I must forever weave these phantoms by this hateful loom. It's a very sad poem in some respects, in a lot of respects, I guess. To switch back, though, to take a look at Larcom's weaving. Larcom, of course, she's going to use a Lady of Shalott kind of comparison here, because as a girl, she worked in the Lowell factory, right, where they worked with textiles. And so she picks up on this as well in her weaving poem that she wrote in 1869, well after the time when she was working in the Lowell factory. She says, all day she stands before her loom, the flying shuttles come and go. By grassy fields and trees in bloom, she sees the winding river flow. And the winding river, she's looking out the window of the factory and she sees the river, and the river is this wonderful symbol of freedom, movement, escape, just going where it wants to go. Rivers are often seen as are used as symbols of one's life, of providence, of destiny, of fate, because they go where they're destined to go, etc. Is she entangled in her dreams like that fair weaver of Shalott? I weave and weave the livelong day. The woof is strong, the warp is good. I weave to be my mother's stay. I weave to win my daily food. But ever as I weave, saith she, the world of women haunteth me. Right? That's an interesting thing. I weave because I have to earn my daily bread. I have to support my mother. I'm in this factory. I'm looking out the window. I'm seeing, nature, and I can't be part of it. This is as much a critique of industrialization as it is of, what we're doing to young women, and we're stunting them creatively, intellectually, artistically by putting them in a sweatshop. The river glides along. The stars are woven in. Of sunrise and the rain cloud. Look at the natural images here. Each seems a separate wonder wrought. So she's stuck in this factory. It's an interesting play on the Lady of Shalott comparison because unlike the others, this one is a direct commentary on the Industrial Revolution, right? So this girl is not just cloistered like the Lady of Shalott, weaving in some tower of a castle with some magic mirror waiting for Lancelot and so on. No, this girl is weaving in a factory, which is probably dangerous, by the way, looking out the window, longing not to have to be a wage slave in this new economy. So it's quite an interesting thing. I think one of the things that unite these two pieces is the struggle of these women writers trying to find an audience that will take them seriously. The magazines helped to do that. Magazines like Atlantic Monthly, as I said, Harper's was a magazine that published very good poetry and short fiction and essays by many women writers and gave them, I think, some credibility. So I think if you want to study women writers in the 19th century and you want to study the careers of them, you cannot overlook the periodicals. And I think we do that too much. We just look at who got published and who was famous. We don't often look at the vehicles that helped them get their voices out there. And I think that's an important thing for us to recognize.